Good.
2 months ago, you witnessed the sea shanty version of Rockstar. Now, get ready for medieval version of Watermelon Sugar. What the hell is happening? I wasn't expecting them to be original in this new album, and they weren't, but at least they are less derivative here. I did enjoy this album more than their first one, that's for sure. But if there's one noticeable thing in here, is that the lows aren't as low as Anthem, but the highs aren't as high as well. The negative highlights feel much less forced. It's not like they're trying to shove down your eardrums the fact they're a revival band, and it gets tiring. It's more like songs that add nothing to the experience of the album. And the positive highlights to me aren't songs that I will return often like I do Age of Man or Brave New World from their first album. They're just songs that I enjoyed, but I don't think they outdo those highlights, even if they are genuinely good. And also, in my view, this record is much more tiring to listen to the previous one. There's a really cumbersome amount of tracks here that could have stayed out of the track list, and the record could be much more enjoyable. There's no offensive moment here. I just end up thinking it's better to revisit just 1 or 2 songs at a time than the whole album. So, 66%. I went to this album with very neutral expectations. I always liked Alfa Mist's work, but it never really clicked with me like it blew my mind. Until now. It's incredible how full of personality this album is. Each song has its own distinct flair, yet it still manages to keep itself being stunningly serene and marvelous. We occasionally have some vocals here and there. While they're not the best part of the record, they surely do their job, making this possibly Alfa Mist's best work, and the deserved album of the month to me, even if some moments here left to be desired. But honestly, that doesn't matter. I love this album regardless, especially the positive highlights that are just insane, and even the negative highlight has something to like. So anyway, this album is an absolute treat. If you like jazz in the slightest, this is a strong recommendation for you. 94%. Overall, I think this is a pretty solid release from Vinnie Pass. Sure, it's not on the same level of Jedi Mind Trick's better material, but we do get some good songs in here. The beats are very consistently good, and we do have some certain improved lyricism in here. My only 2 points against the record is that Vinnie's flow seems to get more robotic, and even reminds me a little of Eminem's flow in Revival, but in a much less degrading way. Nothing could be as degrading as Revival's flow. And the other point is that I feel like it does not justify being over an hour long. It has many great songs, sure, but we could cut like 5 or 6 songs from this and we will still have got a pretty solid album. Overall, we do have some flaws here and there, but we do get some fantastic beats, and a generally pretty nice album, especially when the positive highlights are rolling. Also, negative highlights on screen, followed by the score, 79% superb.
Think. Eat too much and you'll get sick. Shrimps are pretty rich.
I just recently finished my Kero Kero Bonito discography dive, and right after it they released this EP, and thank God they did so, because this is my new favorite release by then. It's just 3 songs, but these 3 songs are all amazing. Fantastic instrumentation, fantastic production, and a great follow-up to Civilisation I. And the fact we have no negative highlights in here says a lot about it. However, I won't lie. There are some aspects from Civilization I that weren't used here that I wish it had came back. Like the more tropical vibe, that is very present there. And here it's just a small pinch. I can't really complain though. The positive highlights are some of my favorite songs by then, and considering this is easily their best release, I'm really excited to see what they bring us in the future. 93% superb in here. First of all, congratulations to Taylor Swift, because it's a well done upgrade to the original Fearless. However, I disagree that this is that much better than the original. Sure, these new compositions are awesome, and are frequently better than the ones of the original Fearless, You Belong With Me especially, but I don't think the original is very behind. I do really like the records, and the main difference of this one is that it feels way more personal, but it's clearly the same album in a new life. My main critique to this record is due to its length. I was expecting it to have more that make each track stand out. They aren't bad, neither the album is tiring. It's just some tracks in the latter half that aren't that memorable or worthy of revisiting. But if someone told me this is their best album, I totally believe. Time for the positive highlights. Now the negatives. Followed by the score of the album of 85% superb. It's good, but I don't think I will revisit it again. At least not for now. The first half begins lukewarm, but it quickly improves massively. Until we reach the title track and the rest of the album is just enjoyable, and I think it could be better, until the last track where it gains strength again. We do have some overall strong guitar performances, and some really great tunes, and even the negative highlights are worth of listening. I just don't think this record is really my cup of tea. At least the positive highlights really pleased me here. 76% spur. As I said, this is still my favorite Griselda record so far, and I hope it keeps going up to the point where I can actually look to a record by any of the members and say, this is one hell of an album. But that's not this one. This one is 67% spur to me. That came much sooner than I expected. Yep, I finally found it. The first Griselda record that I actually liked. In other words, finally a record that throughout its entirety, the beats are fantastic. And the positive highlights are here to tell that. Conway's flow is still great, that only adds to the experience of the album, so yeah, it's time to say, this is one hell of an album. There's still a negative highlight though. Also, it ain't tasting shit like a COVID symptom, I'm a social distance bitch. Wow, 87%. Throughout the last years, we've been facing an ominous fate. Our most beloved pop-punk bands, artists that were once acclaimed, ruining their careers with awful albums. All of this began in 2019, when Blink-182 released The Confusing 9. The following year, we saw Green Day releasing the cringe-worthy, stupid Father of All. Now, it's 2021, and The Offspring just released a new album. Is the cycle about to repeat again? Are we really being forced to witness great bands from the past destroying their careers with comically bad releases, one every year? What's going to come next year? Is this ever going to end? Wow, that was actually not that bad. Sure, it's possibly the band's weakest album, but considering how some historic pop-punk bands absolutely derailed their careers with their most recent outputs, I was expecting this album to do the same, but to my surprise, it's alright. The main thing I have to criticize in here is that the production feels unfinished. Various tracks in here give me the sensation that something's missing in the mix for it to sound whole. What is this thing? No idea. Maybe DJ Khaled yelling his name after every bar. DJ Khaled! But for real, I did think this album had its shining moments, the positive highlights in case, but none of them are really come out and play good. It's the same way that the negative highlights are in Cruising California bad, so it's not the best they could have given, but I'm relieved to see it's not a train wreck. 69% superb. Also, what the hell is this In the Hall of Mountain King cover? I still don't get this. Wow, that is what I call surreal listen. It may not be an album that truly got me, but I can really say it puts the art in the art pop. This is an extremely audacious release. Spoken word segments, poetic lyrics, bizarre but hooking arrangements. Geez, doesn't this record know what bad ideas are? Probably not. However, I like more the concept of the record than actually listening to it. It was certainly a fun experience that I recommend to everybody, but I think at least to me, it could have some more impactful moments. Regardless, it was a nice listening experience. Shout out to the positive highlights, and not so much to the negative one. 70% in here. The vintage Caravan always struck me as one of the best modern hard rock bands, and with this new album they give me even more reasons to believe that. It's hard to find anything to criticize here. The energy of the album is phenomenal, the riffs are great, the guitar solos are titanic, the ballads are very potent, and the positive highlights are some of the best songs of their entire career. The only thing I need to say is that when the album is ending, it loses a bit of the hooking power it was having so far. So much so, that that's where the sole negative highlight of the album lays. But even with that, this record is pretty darn impressive, and definitely another reason to keep paying attention to their music. Hence, 89% superb is the score for this one. I've said this before, but the good thing about me creating this habit of listening to newly released albums is that I'm having some good opportunities to listen to artists that otherwise I'd take longer to get into. Brockhampton is one of those artists, and it is my first ever Brockhampton album. Overall, I did like a considerable amount of what I heard, but in my view, there are some songs in here that are completely insignificant. The negative highlights. They aren't very notable and don't add much to the record. At least, we did get some other great songs that motivate me to keep listening to the Brockhampton's stuff. Positive highlights. It's not a record that blew my mind, but it did interest me in the group's other material. 77%. If your school did a nice job teaching you history, then you might be aware that I placed No Dream as one of my favorite albums of 2020. So me finding out about this new album made me grow a third eyebrow, just so I could raise it with the other ones. And after my curiosity satiated, I can say now that I prefer the original way more. I mean, I did like it, but I don't think it carries the same weight as the original. Some songs were improved in here, some were worsened, but overall I did have fun with this. I just think it would have been more fun if it was in the more energetic lane of ska punk, such as Streetlight Manifesto. Positive highlights on screen, followed by the negatives of the 74% Superb album. Yep, this album only proves my theory that kids are goddamn terrifying. When I went into this, I was imagining all the songs that would sound the same thing as the lead single. But you might be surprised, not only it's not the case, but we also have some pretty good dark ambient songs. Although, put an extra emphasis in the dark, because Jesus Christ, this thing is unsettling at points. And strangely, the atmosphere this album sets isn't of the inside of a womb, but more like a dark space adventure. I can't imagine this being the soundtrack to a horror game or movie set in space. So sure, it's a bizarre concept, but it works surprisingly well here, despite having some weaker tracks. I wonder how the follow-up will be. Luca crying with autotune? Or maybe a 21st century Jordi? Who knows? Regardless, these are my positive highlights, and these were the negatives. And the final score of the album is 74%. Hey Bill Clinton, mind showing up for the monthly collage? Thanks man, really appreciate it.